Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the Son of a Bretsch podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Bretsch. With me today is a good friend of mine. He's a guitar virtuoso, probably one of the most knowledgeable musicians I've ever met. Overall, great guy. Please welcome my guest, Nigel Johnson. All right. So thanks for coming on, man.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So kind of, what you been doing to stay busy during this quarantine?
I've been doing quite a bit to stay busy during the quarantine. I ended up a little bit more busy than I thought I was gonna be, considering everything that was going on and whatnot. But even then, I was still I still managed to get a little bit of work here and there. Of course, being safe, social distancing, all that. But mostly just, a lot more my free time, I've been making it a point to make sure that I'm still bettering myself as just a person, not only a person, but a musician as well. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be graduating in 2 days. I got 2 more days worth of finals left.
Oh, shit, that's exciting.
Yeah, no, I'm way excited. I'm going to have an audio degree from MATC. And honest, all jokes aside and whatnot, MATC program, the audio program there is incredible. I would suggest it to anybody that's interested in, furthering their knowledge in the audio program, in the audio world at all. And yeah.
So, just kind of a question that I have about, taking or getting a degree in audio, because from what I've heard is, say if you're going to apply at a studio or something like that, as even just as an intern, people that run studios, they'll look at that audio degree and then put your application at the bottom of the pile, basically. They don't even really care. They mainly just want to see people with a resume, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, well, and there's definitely a lot of truth to that to a certain degree. Really, ultimately, what studios are gonna be looking for, if you're getting into an apprenticeship kind of thing, is gonna be the kind of work you can do. Mm-hmm. They don't care about your audio degree and whatnot. They care about whether or not you're competent enough to do the work that's necessary to work there. Can you set up and tear down? Do you understand workflow? Do you understand mixing and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's not really the degree that I'm walking away with that I'm super happy to have and whatnot. I mean, it still looks great on paper and everything like that. But ultimately, what I'm grateful for, going back to talking about the MATC program, is that they put a huge emphasis on real life work applications and what my real life applications, what my real life opportunities are in terms of work. Mm-hmm. And, that's one thing I really appreciate most of all, because it made it a lot easier for me to take the steps necessary to get work in my field. So yeah, I guess to kind of answer that, a lot of, it looks great on paper, but a lot of, if you're going to be applying to work at a studio of some sort, they're really going to care more about, your competency as an engineer.
Mm-hmm. So is your main goal to be an engineer, or what's your main goal with?
Well, ultimately, my main goal is to just get as much music-related work as possible. I've been lucky enough, to, be able to get into a little bit of the engineering aspect, working with a couple of people here and there. Shout out to Luke, shout out to Greedy. But, I lost my train of thought, my bad. Anyways, what else is new though, right?
Where do you think your interest in music originally started, as terms of becoming a guitarist, or were you interested in music theory before you started guitar, or did that just come when you started guitar, type of thing?
It came when I started playing guitar. It came a few years after I started playing guitar. And, I was never one of those people that, was turned off from it. You always run into people that are just like, oh, music theory kills creativity. No, the fuck it doesn't. Shut the fuck up. But, I'm just going to be completely honest. the biggest thing that really got me into, musicianship and wanting to, be a musician, wanting to play guitar is Guitar Hero.
Really?
I'm dead ass serious, bro. Like, when I first, because before I got into music, before I started playing guitar, I was huge video game fanatic. Huge, like I did it all day, every day.
Right.
It was just my thing. And, of course, Guitar Hero came around and that was no different. But the thing about Guitar Hero, was that, it was more than just a game for me. It was an experience. Like,
well, I mean, it's kind of like a skill. Like, it's not something you can just pick up and do, like, out of nowhere. You got to literally, like, teach yourself how to do it.
Oh, absolutely. As somebody who's now to the point where I can play a real guitar a lot easier than I can play, a Guitar Hero, and mostly just because I play Guitar Hero so infrequently these days, like, that takes, it's a different set of, muscles that you're using to press those buttons as it is to, press down on strings on a fretboard.
Right.
So, I'll go times when, like, it'll be so long since I played Guitar Hero, I'll hop on a controller, and I'll have fun and whatnot, but there'll be some songs that, like, I used to, just, play, 5-star on expert and stuff like that, and my hand will start cramping up.
Oh, yeah, I
and
remember
just like,
that. I used to have to do this a lot.
Yeah.
Stretch them fingers out.
Yeah, you stretch all them little fingers. But, like, going back to what I was saying earlier, it was Guitar Hero that got me into it. And like I said before, for me, it was more than just a game. It was an experience I really enjoyed. Not only just, hitting all the correct buttons and stuff and making the music come to life, but, it was a good feeling. So, once the time finally came when, it was about April of my junior year of high school when, Ryan, shout out Ryan Kubaki and, AMF, that's our bandmate as well.
Yeah, he's going to be coming on soon, too.
I love that guy.
Yeah, I love that guy, too.
But, he was the one that actually sold me the guitar that I had learned on. He showed up to school one day. He had gotten it was the Schecter Sinister Gates like custom guitar. He was showing it off and everything like that. And him and I were already pretty good friends, to begin with. But he showed up that day, and I knew he had that his little Fender Squire still laying around. And I asked him what he was doing with it, and he was all like, "I don't know what I'm doing with it nowadays. What should I do with it?" I'm like, "You ever think about selling it?" And he sold it to me for that and a little crate amp for a little $200 bundle, and it was history from there. It was crazy too, because when I got the guitar, none of it, at no point did it ever feel like work. The amount of
was it just like an instant obsession kind of thing, like
almost instantaneously. Like, I would literally get off of school, like when I'd be in school, all I could think about all day was playing guitar. When I get home from school, the first thing I pick up, I play it for like 7-8 hours a day until it's like 12 in the morning, and I got to go to sleep because I got to get up for school again.
So when you first started, did you just like instantaneously start getting into like drilling stuff, or were you more of like a noodler, like tab kind of guy?
It was definitely a little bit of everything, because the guitar that Ryan sold me, it wasn't my first guitar that I'd ever owned. It was the first one that I'd like really taken seriously and learned on. And before then, I had this really shitty Fender guitar that had all the pickups ripped out of it, that I bought from my friend Daniel. And of course back then, it was fun to just have, but I didn't really know I didn't even know you were supposed to tune a guitar, or how to tune a guitar. I just tuned it to whatever was most convenient for me, and I would learn tunes by ear, like just little simple melodies and stuff. So then by the time I got my actual guitar, I had started, I went on YouTube, Google, and found tabs, all kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, I pretty much just started with tabs. Like I heard songs that I liked, and I was just like, oh, I want to learn that. I never, like, I it's kind of a big regret for me is not going in, like, and learning all the theory and doing, like, all the scales and stuff like that, because I just went and just started learning songs. But that's if there's any young musicians out here, learn theory, learn your scales, because that's a huge regret that I have, not learning that shit, because now, I mean, I know a couple scales, but I'm not quick with them or anything.
Right. Well, and to go off of what he was saying too, it's absolutely there's a certain point in guitar playing you get to where it is absolutely necessary to learn that. I do, however, believe, one of the best things you can do, when you get an instrument is just play it, just learn stuff, because as far as I see it, it was a couple of years before I actually started actively learning theory. And by then I could already, rip and shred, whatever you could think of, and granted, my experience a lot of times was, when I started learning theory, like the first half of it was basically me, learning stuff about theory and then going, oh, you mean this? It was stuff that I had already learned, and stuff that I already knew. It's just now that I had a name to put on it, kind of a thing. But the most important, aspect, most of all is, just learn stuff, man. Like there's, at the end of the day, it's important to learn scales, arpeggios, what they are, how to use them, stuff like that. But, none of that matters if it can't be applied in a musical context, because that's where the magic happens. So at the end of the day, man, just play, because that's really just what I did, when I first started. And the thing about me too is that, like, I tend to be a little bit of an ambitious person when I get into something. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if I see another human do it, that means I can do it too. So when I got that guitar, the first thing I did was I started looking up like tabs for Metallica solos and stuff like that. And of course, back then, I didn't have the muscle memory to properly learn it in a very efficient manner of time. But, I do remember one of the first solos I ever learned was the solo at the end of One by Metallica. And I learned that I was able to proficiently play that about 2 months into learning, because I literally practiced it for hours every day, until it finally just sounded like music and I had the control for it. And it was funny, because that's the kind of thing where it's like you expect somebody who can play that, oh, they'll have played for years and stuff like that. No, it just took me 2 whole months of just doing that for hours every day, So shout out to my mom and my family for having to listen to all that. Thank you for supporting me on that account. But that's literally what it was. I was just playing, and like I said before, at no point in time did it ever feel like work. It was I always enjoyed myself, even if, I had to, sit there and, take a different approach, slow down, make sure I can play it slow before I play it fast. The whole thing. It was always enjoyable for me.
I honestly really miss that, because I found, I still have I'm still very passionate about music, but I found that when it comes to like legitimately like practicing and stuff like that, like it's something that I have to force myself to do, even though I still love playing drums, and you know what I mean. And that's kind of yeah. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, that's something I'm trying to get back to. I'm trying to reignite that kind of like passion where it just kind of happens naturally, where I just naturally gravitate towards practicing. But so moving on, what is your process, if any, when it comes to writing new songs? Is there like a formula you use, or is it just something like where you just kind of like write a riff and then it just stems from that?
It probably tends to be a little more of the latter. Like, I do have, like, certain formulas that, I'll attest to and whatnot. And, actually, I've gotten to the point now where I've been trying to, stem away from it a little bit and, just find other formulas for writing and whatnot. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff that I've composed has just been, I get inspired, write a riff, it sounds cool, and then, eventually I do that enough times where I'm just like, well, I have enough of these riffs, and, I just see which one of those riffs, can work with other riffs, and before I know it, I have songs. That's usually how it happens. Every now and then, I'll get inspired enough where, like, I'll write a riff, and then the rest of the song just writes itself.
I love when that happens.
Oh, yeah,
that kind of goes into, like, another topic, another kind of thing that I wanted to talk about, like flow states. 'cause, the way I view flow states is like, say you're like writing a song or something, or even like mixing a song, and like you just kind of go into it, and like you start like hitting these like certain sections of I can't even think of the right word, but you start like hitting these notions. I don't know if that's right, but where like you're just like, ooh, that sounds really good, and then you keep going with it, and then it's just like you don't even notice like the time just flying by, because you're like in this flow state where you keep like recording cool shit or like doing cool shit with mixing or something like that. So do you experience flow states like that, like kind of what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, it's actually like interesting you bring that up, because like, there's I'm huge into like MMA and sports fighting and whatnot. So of course, I know all about Bruce Lee and whatnot. And for a while, I used to like get into some of his teachings and stuff like that, because the man had a lot of wisdom to give the world, and he always talked about flow state a lot, in the sense of like, you just you really kind of get in, hone in on something, and before, it's at that point in time, it's the only thing that matters in the world.
It's like where everything around you is just a blur basically, and you're just completely honed in on this one specific thing, and it's just like, it's kind of crazy actually. It's a crazy thing to experience.
And I was because one thing I was going to say is, one of the issues I can run into sometimes is, the motivation to get something started. And they always say, starting and finishing something is always, the hardest parts of any, sort of creativity, and that's a lot of times for me where, sometimes I'll wake up and, I might not necessarily, want to practice guitar. I might not necessarily want to hop on the computer and, mix some shit or program some drums or something like that. But, literally it's just a matter, of, just start, and, if after a while, it's just not happening, it's just not happening. But more often than not, once you get a start on it, you can usually, start to pick up some momentum, and before you know it, you're just in it.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely what I would say too, because I've had to force myself to do stuff. But then once you get into like a groove doing it, it's literally just, it's like nothing. You know what I mean? You end up feeling a hell of a lot better too afterwards. To like, I talked in like a previous episode about like motivation and discipline, and that's like a huge thing. You just got to think like, once I actually get into this, then I'm going to be into it. I might not feel like it right now, but once I get into it, it's just going to be like, I'm in there.
Oh, exactly. You know what I mean? Like I think a good example would be like, working out, especially like when working out is a lifestyle for somebody, because at that point it's like they do that every day. And, I think that's a good example, because I'm sure, a lot of times you'll run into people who live that lifestyle. They don't wake up every day, just wanting to go to the gym. Some days they might just want to stay in bed and,
right,
do whatever. But they get up and they do it anyway.
Have you ever heard of Jocko Willink?
The name sounds very familiar.
So this guy, I actually want to pull it up, because I want to be cool, because I just got this set up where I can do this. But he's like, he's basically like a Navy SEAL. He's retired now. But he's just like he's super hardcore. He posts his watch every single day at 4:30 in the morning, and then he posts shit like this.
So I'll hear people say, if you believe it, then you can achieve it. And the problem with that is they're leaving out the most important part of the equation. And that part is work, action, actually doing something. That's what you have to do to achieve anything. Yeah, you gotta believe it, but you better get the work done. It's Monday. Take action. Go get some, y'all. Have a good one. Out. So I'll...
But yeah, you get the point.
Hell yeah, I wish that guy was my dad.
Dude, same. I wish I was just like raised with that guy telling me shit. You know what I mean?
No,
I'd
it's
probably
the kind of thing, it would have been hard, but you would have thanked him later for it.
Right.
No, but like he brings up an absolutely good point. One of the, things that happens too, especially we were talking about, motivation and discipline, and, what it boils down to is like, it's one thing to, when you write a song because you just got the motivation, you got the inspiration, you just got up and you did it. That's nice when that happens. But, the real, what separates the men from the boys is the people who are willing to sit down and do the work even when they're not motivated, even when they don't want to.
Right.
That's when it really, that's when it really matters the most. Your ability to, still do well even at, your weakest points, is what matters the most. And that guy's got it. Like he's got the right idea. It's more than one thing to just sit there and believe like, oh, I'm gonna make a career out of music and stuff like that. It's another thing to actually live that life. It's more than it's more than just talking that talk. You got to walk that walk too. Like, and at the end of the day, what you don't want to be is one of those people that has this idea in your mind that you're gonna make a living off of art, any sort of art, or whatever you want to do, and then not put in the work. I think it was The Rock who said, don't go work for a company for 8 hours and then come home and don't work on your dreams. You're not tired, you're uninspired. And
Right.
for the most part, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, there's exceptions here and there. People, have situations come up, and of course mental health is a huge, thing too. But at the end of the day, there's no substitute for the work. You either can or you can't.
Right. If I go to work and then I come home and just like sit around and don't like either do some like video work or do some music work or do like a podcast like what we're doing now, I just feel like I completely wasted my day, even though I went and worked 8 hours. But like that's how I feel, and that's kind of my mindset. You were talking about like if you want to make a music your career, and that's kind of a good segue into like another question I had. So like, because we're in a metal band, we're in a metalcore band, and
Metalcore sucks.
Metalcore sucks. So where do you think the metal industry is headed in terms of like bands and producers? Like, do you think it's a viable career to be like in a metal band or be like a metal producer?
Yes. Honestly, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because while, metal and, just heavy music in general, isn't necessarily, at the top of the mountain and whatnot. I'm pretty sure right now the world number one genre is hip hop. But, it's not such an obscure genre that, people don't know what it is. It's a very popular, I think it was like 2016 or something where, metal was the most listened to genre on Spotify. So, for what it's worth, there's still plenty of, there's still work to be had in the industry. One thing I think, that's kind of happens though is that, and that's not to imply that, this doesn't come in, a lot of other genres, but, we can speak, from the fact that, we're into it and whatnot, just how much elitism happens. Think about it. Like in the pop industry, when somebody, starts blowing up, gets real big, everybody wants to work with them. They start getting features all over the place and stuff like that. And, you just kind of don't have that same thing, in the metal community, at least not as much, that's not, I definitely think, we've kind of gotten a start, bands have started doing stuff like split EPs, they've long since, featured other, people from other bands and their stuff and whatnot. But like, it's not nearly as, prevalent, in the metal community as it is, because there's always so much elitism. There's always, oh, I don't like this particular subgenre, that you like, so, your opinions are invalid and you listen to garbage music, blah, 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 blah. And, people are always just acting like assholes all the time. With that said, like I said before, I do think, there's definitely, you can definitely make a career doing that. There's definitely plenty of people that have done so. One thing I will say for sure is, don't expect it to be like it was back in the day. You don't just, get popular, sign a deal, and then, suddenly you're there. I think, it was Periphery who was talking about how, like, they don't really make a lot of money off, touring and stuff like that. A lot of their money, comes from endorsements, business, deals that they have, with other people and whatnot.
Yeah, I think the most money you can make like on tour is like merch basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking to Luke Steffens a couple weeks ago, and he actually found a good hack for being on tour, and that's bring a fucking camera with you. So if you're on tour and you're like, apparently you can make just like tons of money just off of like talking to all the bands that you're like playing a specific show with, and just saying like, hey, I'll take pictures of your set for like $40,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can just kind of grind out doing that.
Yeah, just look, that's a nice little side hustle. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's really what it boils down to is, not even just with metal either, but in, the music industry at all. Like, unless you get lucky enough to make a decent career out of, one particular, niche thing, you got to be willing to wear a lot of hats.
Yep.
You have to be an audio engineer. You have to be a musician. You have to be a music teacher. You have to be able to do a lot of things. A lot of times, there's this always this huge notion among parents of like, oh, there's no money in the music industry, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. You just have to bust your ass.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of different things. Because generally, just being in a band alone is not going to pay your bills. Unless you're like, you blow up like fucking Nickelback or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you basically you just you have to have you have to be like an entrepreneur. Like being in a band and making a living off of music these days is you have to actually be like a legitimate entrepreneur. You have to run your band like a business, and then you have to run like side businesses that you do that kind of like coincide with being in a band. You know what I mean?
Right.
So moving on. So like I know from like you and I have even like butted heads on certain things and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like what do you think is like a good way to like handle like if like issues arise in like with your bandmates or something like that, or say like your bandmate is doing something you don't like during like performing, and you want them to change that or something like that. Like what do you think is a good way to like kind of approach discussing with them, like I don't know how what's a good way to like find like a good like happy medium with your bandmates if there's like a disagreement or something like that.
Right on. And actually that's a really good question, because it's something that I've actually personally, did a lot. I've learned a lot about it, especially over the past 2 years with, finally trying to get AMF back up and running and things like that. A couple of, core things that you want in place. One, make sure everybody in the band understands the hierarchy of, the band. Make sure everybody in the band knows their role. If somebody's, getting into, a band where it's basically like, the dude's like, hey, this is my band, I'm just, paying you to play my music. Understand that that's your position and you will play that music as, they want you to. Whereas if you're in a band where, everybody has, equal say in what's going on, first and, foremost, that's the thing that matters the most. But second of all, especially when it comes to like compositional things, I live by this idea that, music is such, your composition has such infinite possibilities that it's nearly impossible to not settle on something that everybody likes. Right. And if there's somebody in the band that's just, so, far off the mark, that they just don't like what's going on at all, maybe they just need to go find a band they'd rather be in, because, there's nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm not feeling the music anymore. I'm gonna go find something I like. Awesome. And actually, more power. More power to them. But if anything, I appreciate that a lot more than somebody trying to stick around, and do something that they just can't do, because that's just going to be frustrating for everybody. Not to get like too far off topic, the thing that matters, especially with me, because like, I, through the history of AMF, I've tended to do the bulk of the writing. It's not that I intended it to be that way. It's just kind of happened. A lot of times I'll always be inspired. I'm always writing, new riffs all the time. And, but one thing I always do is that, I'm not going to tell somebody what to play. I'm just going to tell somebody whether or not I like what they're doing, not in the sense that like, if I have a song idea, I'm going to tell you, like, and this is the groove, that I want for it. This is the kind of feeling I want. I think that's a good way to put it. It's like, I'll tell my bandmates the feeling that I'm going for, and it's up to them to construct it in a way that they see fit, a way that they feel, they are, can impart their own personal musical prowess on and whatnot. Because at the end of the day, I want it to feel like everybody's music. And one thing that can be kind of tough is that like sometimes you just have to straight up tell somebody, I'm sorry, I don't like that, But the thing that matters most is making sure that you have bandmates that don't take it personally. Because, there's been a lot of times where, I've come with an idea that I thought was just the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then I present it to the band and everybody's just like, I'm, I'd be sitting there like, feelings be hurt. Like, but, at the end of the day, like I said, you don't take it personally because, they're not out, they're not sitting there like, oh, this sucks. You suck. You're stupid. They're just being honest with you. And, at the end of the day, you'd much rather have somebody who's, willing to be honest with you about it than somebody who's, going to pretend like they're okay with it. And then later down the line, bring it up. And then you got to sit there like, well, why didn't you say something when I asked?
Right.
And,
like, unless you like absolutely just despise an idea, you got to kind of think of like what's going to be the best for the band. Basically, you know what I mean? Like, what's going to be the best for the flow of this song, rather than me just, I like to play this type of thing. You know what I mean?
Precisely. And that's one thing I really, really kind of went for with, the new music that AMS is going to be putting out is that, like, for one, there's obviously going to be, a huge shift in, the sound that we're going for nowadays because we just have new influences now. I always make the joke like, when AMF first started, we had influences like Bullet for My Valentine and Avenged Sevenfold and whatnot. But like some heavier influences too, enough to warrant us wanting like a screamer and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But, I always make the joke like I didn't even know what a breakdown was until I got into the local scene. Like, but, once I started, becoming surrounded by, other people in the scene, I started discovering, other bands, that, were doing music that I'd never really heard of before. I even, grew to the point where, I appreciated, a lot of music that I didn't really care for before. Like, I remember when I first started listening, I guess, quote unquote, breakdown music, I wasn't a fan. I, got a little bit of lease about it and whatnot. And, I don't know what happened, but that bug just bit me. And, nowadays, I don't even shred anymore. I'm just going to play some breakdowns. Like,
yeah. When I was growing up, I didn't like screaming. I hated it, like, with the burning passion. Then all of a sudden, I think it was my friend Tomas. You remember Tomas, obviously. But he showed me August Burns Red. I think the first song I heard by them was Whitewashed. And I was just like, oh, shit.
You just was not ready.
I like screaming now.
It happens like that. I mean, I've always kind of, ever since I could remember, I've always had a wide, taste in music. Like, my mom, she liked a lot of stuff, she listened to. She was a huge Beatles fanatic. So I know more about the Beatles than, most everybody I ever come into contact with. But she even had a pretty wide variety of, stuff that she liked to listen to as well. She listened to like a lot of more old school country. She would listen to like funk and stuff like that. My dad tended to listen to a lot more hip hop, and rap. But he had a fairly wide range too. He loved Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah, they slept, man. I just got to be honest. So I always had a pretty wide variety. And then growing up with the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series, like it was over, man. Like
this is 2 episodes in a row that we're talking about Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Did you see the new how they're
yes, yeah, they're
games?
remastering the first 2 games, and honestly, I'm ready for it. Like,
I heard that they took Trapped off of it.
Poor baby.
Because Trapped's just on dirt.
Can I just say for a second, actually, like, I kind of heard this thing where, like, supposedly they're going to be putting out new music soon, and if that is the case, those guys are actually geniuses. As insufferable as they are on the internet, they knew exactly what to do to get, people buzzing and talking about them so that when they drop their music, you're going to listen to it.
Right. They attacked Dance Gavin Dance. Like.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is like, be honest, when they drop new music, are you going to listen to it?
I'll check it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be honest. I liked Headstrong. Like growing up, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, no,
it did kind of go hard.
Shit kind of made you want to fight a mountain, like.
Or.
But going back, because we were talking before, we were talking about just handling disputes and bands and stuff like that. At the end of the day, just make sure that you're creating a product that, everybody likes. If everybody's supposed to have say-so in it, because it's everybody's music, and it should be everybody's music. And I remember what I was saying now. With the newer music, I've made it a point to, make it, kind of find other formulas, that I like, for one, because, if you listen to the last record, it tends to be, a lot of the songs tend to be, intro, verse, chorus, bridge, solo, chorus out, and, stuff like, not that there was necessarily a problem, but, there was pretty much a guitar solo in each and every song. Not that there's necessarily, a problem with that, but, first off, that particular style of music, hasn't been in for a while. Not that, you should be, writing, stuff based on what you think is in or not. You should write from the heart. But, this time
Unless you want to sell out. Which some people do.
I'm eventually gonna sell out.
I probably am too. I'm gonna start making like an '80s hair rock or something like that.
You know what? The time moves in a circle, bro. What's old will be new.
Or I'm just gonna become like a Post Malone character.
Get some face tattoos.
Yeah, get some face tattoos. Become a SoundCloud rapper.
Hell yeah. But
that seems to be the move nowadays.
Seems to. I mean, I don't know. Depending on who you ask, like it seems like SoundCloud definitely doesn't have the pull that it used to, but it's still a good place to post your music and get a good start.
Well, I mean, what?
Excuse me.
I personally wouldn't use SoundCloud. I can literally put it's so easy just to upload to YouTube or put your stuff on Spotify. Like, what's the point of SoundCloud anymore? You know what I mean? You think there's an actual point to it?
Oh, there's definitely still a point. Like SoundCloud is still good for specific reasons. I know a lot of people, what they like to do is they'll post if they're putting out new music, they'll post their demos on SoundCloud for because if you have somebody that is like super popular, to the point where they don't really need a SoundCloud, but they still have one, their core the core fans are usually going to be the ones that are, listening, into your stuff on SoundCloud. I've, noticed some people like to do this thing where if they put out new music, they might put out like a demo version of it on SoundCloud before
to get some feedback type of thing.
Maybe, or even just, something to go, here's something to hold y'all off while, we work on, something big, kind of a thing. And, you can, there's still people even to this day still, getting a decent start in their music career from SoundCloud, but it's not for everybody. It really, depends on what you're trying to do and whether or not SoundCloud, would be a good medium for it. More often than not, it's not going to hurt to put stuff on SoundCloud or, most mediums where people can listen to your stuff for that matter.
Right.
But it is what it is. And if SoundCloud's not your thing, don't use it.
Yeah, true that. Well, I'm all out of questions pretty much, but we can still kind of like keep going.
Right, because I think there was one more point I wanted to make in regards to the last question you had asked, but yeah, I thought it would have came to me by now. It hasn't, so apparently it wasn't important.
Well, man, this is kind of hard. It's kind of hard to do podcasts and keep the conversation moving. It honestly kind of reminds me a lot of like when how I was doing stand up for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's difficult. Like I don't want to sound like fucking an idiot because I'm putting this out for the whole world to see, but like fucking. I give Joe Rogan a lot of fucking credit because he can just like go and just talk, and he just like can just talk for hours. Like it's so insane how he can just talk for like 4 fucking hours, and I have trouble trying to talk to somebody for an hour. Like,
yeah, well, and it is what it is too, and sometimes especially like because the thing about I think the biggest difference between the Joe Rogan podcast and like similar podcasts is that he has an idea of the kind of stuff that he'll talk about and ask, but like literally they're just shooting the shit.
Yeah,
they're just talking. Like,
and since he's famous, people will just listen. Like that's what's difficult about this is I'm not well known. You know what I mean? I'm not a famous person
yet.
But yeah. So like people just probably think I sound like an idiot most of the time. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
It's all of it.
But pretty much, I'm just gonna keep doing it, and if y'all like it, I'm just gonna keep doing it regardless if y'all like it or not.
That was good. Well, and that's that's definitely the attitude to have too.
Yeah,
like especially like okay, because I'm we're both in a lot of like the same guitar groups and stuff on Facebook. Emmanuel Aguilar.
Oh, dude.
Oh man, that like he perfectly embodies.
Dude, let me pull
idea.
that guy up really quick.
Fingers aliens, man.
Yeah, we're gonna show some Emmanuel Aguilar really quick. Is this thing still running?
Looks like it.
Yep, it's still running.
Nice. No, but like he perfectly embodies that idea because he sits and he posts his videos of him just ripping and running through any note pattern whatsoever. I'm almost certain it's he doesn't plan out any of it. It's all improvisation and everything. But like that's not even the point. The point is like let's go ahead and just
This is Emmanuel Aguilar. This is what he does, and he just doubles down, no matter what.
Honestly, he gets Kick Carry King out of Slayer. This is the man for y'all. No, but and of course it's a lot of chromatic. It's a lot of chromatic nonsense and whatnot. And he gets a lot of shit for it. But the way that he handled himself, in the face of, criticism, literally got him to the point where it's funny because if you see, anybody, for every person that trashes him in guitar groups, there's like 5 people that like are there to defend him and whatnot.
Right.
And it's because of the way he responds. He never responds in a negative sense. He never lets, negative comments get to him. He's always just hugs, brother. We are one. We are together. Like, and it's to the point where it's like you can't hate him. And if you do, you look like an asshole for hating him. Like,
have you ever had to deal with like negative feedback like from something you put out?
All the time.
How do you kind of handle that?
You just you gotta take it as is. And I mean, the biggest thing I gotta say too is that you gotta have thick skin when you're putting anything out at all.
Right. I've noticed that like you can have like a million different like positive comments on your stuff, but one negative one will just stick out like a sore thumb. Like you just see that one negative one and you're just like, oh.
Mm-hmm. And especially because I think it was something the brain is sometimes made to respond to negativity a little stronger than it would be positivity. So it's like it can be if you, for me it's one of those things where it's like I'm to the point now where I don't really care about a lot of criticism. I just be cool, and especially because a lot of times criticism, especially if it's the more negative the criticism is, the more likely it is that criticism is coming from somebody whose opinion literally does not matter. Right. A lot of times, positive criticism is going to come from people who want the best for you and want to see you grow and things like that. And that's a lot of the reason why especially if I'm in a position where I need to tell somebody like oh hey maybe you need to work on this technique, or you need to do this and that to get better. I always try to make it a point to I don't want to necessarily use the word like pat it, but it's kind of a process I have. I compliment first, critique second. Tell them what they're doing right first. So that it doesn't just feel like you're just telling them what they're doing wrong the entire time, because nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to be in a band where all that happens all the time is just oh, you played this wrong, you were supposed to have known this and that, blah blah blah. If I come across a part where especially because a lot of times it could be just minor stuff too. Oh, do I have something on my face? Or?
No, that was
all right.
You actually do. To be honest, it's right on your eyebrow right there. I don't know if it's like, okay, you got it.
I don't know what that is. It's gross.
It's been bugging me the whole podcast. I'm not gonna lie.
Damn, and you just let me sit there and just have that on my face?
I'm sorry. I thought it was funny.
No, you're good. You're good. But the key is basically compliment first, tell them what they're doing right, and then you give the critique. But the most important part is I don't give a critique without also providing a solution to the problem at hand. It's easy for me to go, hey, fix that. It's another thing for me to go, hey, try this, or that, maybe incorporate this into your practices and whatnot, because
I actually, now that you say something about it, I've noticed that you kind of do that. Like the last time we were at practice, you like complimented like how I have like a couple fills where they're very like smooth and
fluid.
Yeah. And then you said something about, but this fill.
Yeah, like I think if I remember correctly, it was there's certain ones where basically I can hear when you tense up, because like you might nail the fill, but the fluidity wasn't there, like that pocket.
One thing that I've noticed with because how I started practicing. Eventually, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna be using that finger technique for everything. Is basically what's gonna happen, because I've noticed already. Because it took me like, because when I first started trying to do, it's a flying fingers technique. It's what a lot of people use to do like blast beats and shit like that. But I could not get my left hand to do that movement at all, and my left hand just felt awkward and like a piece of shit for the longest time. But now I'm finally starting to get like fluid with it, to the point where like when I go to do like a quick like fill, like it just automatically starts to go to that.
Oh yeah, no,
and then I've noticed when I'm like grooving, like my hand will just automatically start to go to that. And honestly, it makes me really excited, because
I was gonna say, and I've noticed that too, because you're definitely still you're for sure a much better drummer, than you were 5 years ago. You're a much better drummer than you were when you first joined. You're a better drummer than you were, a month ago.
Right.
And that's at the end of the day, that's the thing that matters the most is, making sure, making sure that you are a better, whatever, not even just a musician, but whatever you do. If you're a skydiver, if you're, whatever, make sure you are better than you were yesterday. And going back on what you were saying earlier, in terms of, when you were, finally getting the fluidity, for that flying finger technique into your left hand, like, I'm sure you noticed, like, it took a while, but really what it boiled down to was you just do it.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have it explained to you, and, watch videos, but like at the end of the day, you just got to grind it out. And you just got to do it until it starts to feel natural, and that's really what it, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of like, inspiration versus, motivation versus discipline and stuff like that is that, that's, when I post videos of me, like just ripping and shredding, and, stuff like that, I posted, I think the last one I posted was, that one of me doing the intro to Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
And,
Which you nailed, by the way. I will say that.
Thank you. And that's the part of it, that people don't see is, all the work that goes into it, for that 30-second clip, of me just
like what, like a week or two?
It from the point that I started learning it, it took me 4 days of practicing it every day to be able to play it that clean. Mm-hmm. 4 whole days of just doing it every day for, about an hour or two maybe. And I, finally got to that point. But, it also goes back to that thing where, because I'm finally starting to get back to that point in my life where, like, I enjoy the process, because that's really what matters the most at the end of the day is, like, you have to enjoy, the process of learning to a certain extent. You have to enjoy the process of, like, yeah, this is, I want to be, ripping and, running around on my kit right now, and I just want to be grooving and playing. But then that discipline aspect that comes in of, I'm going to make myself sit down. I'm going to play this 10 times in a row, slow, accurately, so that I know I can play it fast. That's where the real work comes in. And that's the part that people don't see, so, we go out, let's say, we go out, we play a show and, we nail absolutely, everything we do, that 30 minutes that, people watched us do that, they don't sit there and they don't think about the fact that, we'd been practicing for years just to get to that point.
Right.
And, at the end, you have to be willing to do that because, like I said before, I'm starting to get back to that point where, I get off work, I get off school or, whatever kind of work that I'm doing, I'm finally back to the point where, the first thing on my mind is I want to go home, I want to play my guitar, or I want to go home, I want to practice singing, or, I want to go home, practice drums, whatever.
Right.
No,
I'm definitely the same way.
Like you have to you
actually in the past like 2 months, I've kind of started like having like using like a schedule basically, because I have so many different things that I'm working on right now. Like I'm doing a podcast, I'm working on like vocal covers, and I just put out this like little quarantine collab that I was doing with Kyle from Leechmonger. I don't know if you saw that.
Did you post that earlier? Because I think I saw it.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna go check it out later. Give it a share and everything. Show some love.
I appreciate that, dude. But and then I played drum like, and on a day, or I don't even know where I was going with this, but I just noticed that like. It's just when on a day where I come home from work, I work on some of my solo music. I practice drums. I do whatever else. Edit my podcast. Do whatever. Like I just feel like so great after I do all that stuff. Like it just brings me like such a fantastic feeling. Like I'm doing all this stuff, and it's just yeah.
Like because it's that whole thing where even if you don't necessarily want to. You're not gonna feel bad after you do it.
No, you feel great.
You
feel so like accomplished and like I got a lot done today.
Mm-hmm. But
like even like I know we're talking a lot about like discipline, motivation, stuff like that. Even like just, I heard this on a podcast, and I'm just gonna repeat it. But so when you wake up in the morning, even something as simple as just making your bed, like that's what's gonna like start you off to like a fantastic day. Because so you're already like, you wake up in the morning, you make your bed. That's one thing off the list. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then you go and do like make breakfast. That's another thing off the list. You go work out. That's another thing off the list. You know what I mean? Just like that's such like those kinds of things like just bring you like so much. That's like if you're feeling like depressed and stuff, it's because you're not doing that shit. Like it literally is. I mean, some people like have an extreme form of depression, but like I guarantee you, if you wake up in the morning, make your bed, clean your room, take a shower, go work out, you're gonna start feeling great, and it's gonna turn your whole mood around.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially like the part where you brought up about the depression, because that can that's one of those slippery slope kind of topics where like you can easily just you might have good intentions, but you say the wrong thing, and all of a sudden you got people down your back of, oh, well, I'm glad you think it's that easy, blah, 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 blah. Like, as, especially as somebody who, though I'm lucky enough to not, have it in such, have had depression, like clinically, or, like have it be like a chemical imbalance, I am, I'm personally recovering from, a couple of, bad years where, I got like severely depressed and everything. And, it's one of those things where, I definitely got depressed to the point where, like, I know what it's like to be so depressed that you are, you basically feel like you're disabled.
Yeah.
But, there's also the part, too, where, eventually for me, like I said, I was lucky enough to, be able to do that. I got to a point where, you got to be strong enough. You got to be strong enough to fight through it. At the end of the day, the brain is a very powerful, thing. Two things I realized about the brain is, one, how impressionable it is and how easy it is to get your mind into a cycle. Whether or not you get it into a good cycle or a bad cycle, is dependent on things you do. And like you were talking about earlier about the, guy who says, when you wake up in the morning, just, make your bed, because I think that's a good example of, that's the first thing you do is, because who just wakes up and is excited to just make their bed? Like, ooh, I've been waiting to do this, since last night.
No, but oh shit, I don't know. Damn, we've been going, huh? So continue.
But like I was saying, you don't just. Who just wakes up like, oh man, I've been thinking about doing my bed since I went to sleep last night. Nobody. But it's just the fact of the matter is, you wake up and you do that, and if anything, even if that doesn't necessarily put you in the greatest of moods, even if you're so grumpy and whatnot, you're not gonna feel worse for doing it. You're not gonna feel worse for doing something productive.
Right. And like going back to what I said about like cleaning your room. Like nobody like you just said, nobody wants to clean your room, but once I know you can attest to this, I can attest to this. Like it's such a pain in the ass when you're doing it, but once your room is all like clean and organized, it gives you like I said, just such a great feeling. You know what I mean? It turns your whole mood around.
And especially because recently I've always admittedly kind of been one to have a messy room a lot.
Yeah, same.
But just recently there was a couple of weeks ago I had gotten in this mode where I was just like I'm gonna start cleaning this, and it started kind of slow, but then I got into that that flow state we were talking about earlier where like I was just on it, and suddenly I just found myself doing a whole bunch of stuff. And before I knew it, a few hours had passed, my room was clean, and I just felt great. Not, I didn't even feel tired after I was done. I was like, man, I want to keep doing stuff. Like,
right.
So, lucky enough, for that to happen. But, it's one of those things where at the end of the day, like I was saying, the mind is a very, impressionable thing, and it's really easy to get yourself caught up in patterns. But the other thing is, a lot of people don't realize just how much, power they have over their own mind as well.
Right. That's
And
where the discipline comes into play.
that
Let's go back and watch that Jocko video. Like exactly what he was saying. Like, don't settle. Don't settle for less. You know what I mean? Push yourself.
Exactly, because I think the biggest point I wanted to make at the end of the day is that, like, yes, you want to absolutely make sure you're being understanding. Listen to your friends when they're when you can clearly see they're depressed or distressed and stuff like that. Be there for them. But at the end of the day, we live in a world where we do live in a world where there's a lot of gray area, but in terms of the functionality in the society we set up, there's a lot of stuff that's very black and white. You either do or don't, you can or can't. And I think a good example would be the way the music industry works, because like if you're trying to get a career in that, the industry doesn't care that your mental health's been shit. The industry doesn't care that your dog just passed away or your grandfather just passed or whatever. The industry doesn't care that you work 3 jobs and are going to school and you're tired all the time. The only thing they care about is whether you can or cannot do something. And if you can't do it, they're going to go find somebody that can.
Right.
So a lot, and especially for a lot of people who want to, who have this idea in their mind that they want to do this, one of the most important things you can do is, be completely honest with yourself, about whether or not that is something you can handle, because, it takes a lot of work, to get yourself in a position where you can make a career. And then if you're lucky enough to get in a position where, you blow up, get a huge following and you start doing that, that's when the real work begins,
Right.
because sudden, not that I would, know, but, that's when the real work begins. A lot of the stories that, people will tell about, their come up and whatnot, they'll tell you like, I didn't realize how much work went into it. I didn't realize how many people I was going to have to hire. I didn't realize,
Right.
That I was going to be, if I'm not recording, I'm out touring. If I'm out touring, I'm out recording. And, I didn't realize how much time I wasn't going to have to myself. And it's hard work. And that, that's honestly why I believe, like, a lot of one-hit wonders, it's no, I know for a fact there's a lot of one-hit wonders because they blew up, realized how much work actually went into it, and decided that life wasn't for them.
Right.
And that's perfectly acceptable because it is a grueling. The music industry can be a very grueling, job to have. If
Right.
you're not,
I actually heard that from because my dad he works for this company called Clearwing. And he was a truck driver for them for a long time. Now he's like in charge of the whole transportation department and stuff. And he used to go on tours with this band called One Night of Queen. And basically what it was there's this guy, Gary Mullen, I believe his name is. And he won like this competition that's kind of like American Idol, and except it was in the UK. Mm-hmm. But basically what it was you go up and you basically do an impersonation of like a star from like a music star from like old times, basically. Right. And this guy did like an amazing impersonation of Freddie Mercury. So he won the competition as Freddie Mercury, and now he tours the world in a band called One Night of Queen. That it's just like a Queen cover band, but they're really, really fucking good. And my dad was truck driving with them for a long time. And he became like really good friends with them. They're all from the UK, and like one time he like invited them all over here for like a bonfire, and we had like this big bonfire with like these basically famous musicians and stuff. It was the coolest shit ever. But I was talking to the drummer about like how I want to, my goal is to get into like the music industry and make a living off of it. And he's like, well, he basically said the exact same thing. He's like, he's like, well, you're in for a grueling road ahead. And it's just like, yeah, but I love it regardless.
And at the end, that's really what it boils down to is you have to love it. You have to love
You
it
have
so
to be
much.
obsessed with it.
And that's literally, kind of been like the whole thing with me is like, excuse me. A lot of times, when I would make music progress, it's because there was one particular aspect of music that I'd become obsessed with. Like, when I first started, I was obsessed with, wanting to learn how to shred and rip and whatnot. So, that's a lot of the stuff I learned. And then eventually down the line, I became obsessed with something. And that's one thing I kind of noticed too, is that if I get to a point where there's some musical thing that I become obsessed with, it usually imparts its inspiration into my practice and into my playing. But ultimately, going back to what you were saying earlier, you gotta love the hustle, you gotta love the work, because if we're being completely honest, like The Rock said, you don't go work for a company for 8 hours and then come home and not work on your goals and dreams. If it's like, if you've got time to get off work and do whatever the fuck, you've got time to work on your goals. Whatever those might be. And it's the people, one of the most common phrases I always heard in music school and whatnot is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And at the end of the day, what it boils down to is, like a good scenario would be, if a band is looking for a singer, and they boil it down to two singers, and one singer is just absolutely phenomenal, like incredible range, almost never messes up, but they're always late, sometimes they don't even show up, they're unreliable. And then you have a singer that maybe isn't quite all the way there, but is still good in their own right, good enough to get the job done, but you can count on them. Mm-hmm. That's the person they're going to go with. That's the person you want to go with, because first off, that hard work is what brings talent in the first place. Mm-hmm. You use words, Nigel. You and I, practicing the way we have and, getting to the point in our musicianship that we have, a lot of that, was the work that got put in, like, the ability you have with, the way you play your drums, the way you play your guitar and whatnot, that came from hours of work that you did. And if you're not
close to 10,000, probably.
Yeah, that 10,000. They say it takes 10,000 hours to do something proficiently. It takes 10 hours of practicing the correct way to do something proficiently. But ultimately the sentiment is still there. But like I said, really it's it can be a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. But at the end of the day, it's like if you're saying one thing but you find yourself doing another, either you either need to buckle down, or maybe you need to reconsider
what you're doing.
What you're doing, and whether or not that's something you actually want to do. Mm-hmm. Because nobody who it's very rare where somebody doesn't have to put a whole lot of work into something, and then they just blow up. Right. And even if you're lucky enough where you just blow up out of nowhere, you're not just gonna stay famous. You still have, like I said, that's when
you have to continuously keep, because otherwise people see your one thing that you do and I like that guy, but if you don't put anything else out, they're gonna forget about you like that.
Exactly. Especially in this day and age where we have we're scrolling and we have so much, we're taking in so much content at one time. Like I always say now, like 15 minutes of fame is now boiled down to 15 seconds. Right. Because that's
if what you're posting isn't intriguing within the first 15 seconds, then you're gonna.
It's over.
That's why we got to get this intro song made.
For sure. But like I was saying, even if you are lucky enough where you just go viral out of nowhere, you're not just gonna stay famous. People. If you don't put in the work, people will forget about you. In a week.
Right.
They're already on to the next thing. But that's really what it boils down to is because someone like Bruno Mars. Like, I'm a huge Bruno Mars fan. And remember hearing some of he got he got his start, when he was real little. As an Elvis impersonator, and he was real cute.
Really? I didn't know that.
You literally, like, he was on, I forget what the name of the show was, but it was one of those like late night shows where like they'll talk about stuff, do skits or whatever, and at the end they'll have a musical act, and there's a little 6-year-old Bruno Mars, Elvis impersonator, like so he got his start pretty early.
Was it In Living Color or whatever?
I
don't know if it was that one.
I don't know, but so he kind of got his start then. But even his story, he talks about how he was basically homeless for a little bit, kind of living out of his car, when he was trying to make it happen. Before things really started to pick up for him and happen, and it's that's really when it kind of hit me. I'm like, I had to sit there and I asked myself, I'm like, do I love this enough to make it a career to the point where I would willing to be homeless for it? Like,
and do you?
Yeah, as
I would say I do too, honestly.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do it, but it's also one of those, I also know that I personally, can work a lot harder, on what I'm doing. And, I've already, kind of made my plans to, what I want to do, especially now that I'm going to be graduating. I don't have to worry about school anymore and stuff. I can focus a lot more of the energy that I was using for school into, what I'm going to be doing. So that's going to be real nice, and of course that discipline aspect of, making sure I, actually do it and whatnot. But, it's, I think that's a good way to put it. Is like, I don't want to say, you have to be willing to, be homeless to achieve your dreams and whatnot. But, if, that the story being, that's how much it means to some people to make it happen, and, you have to, I'm not saying you have to be homeless, but you have to have that kind of mentality. You have to have that kind of dedication. And
you have to be willing to make a lot of sacrifices. Sacrifice is like the biggest thing with it. You know what I mean?
Precisely. And, if that mindset's just not there, I'm sorry to say it, but, maybe you need to reconsider, a different career path.
Right. Look for something that gives you that mindset. You know what I mean? That's where you're gonna, where you're willing to put in that type of work and dedication. That's where you're gonna find success. If you're doing something, and you don't have that type of dedication, then that's like, you're either just gonna stay stagnant or you're gonna end up like falling out of it basically. And yeah. But so find something that you're willing to put that dedication into and stick with it, and put that work into.
Don't be a lazy bitch.
Yeah, don't be a lazy bitch. But we just did an hour, so go ahead and like plug anything you want. Like if you want people to find you on social media or anything like that, where can they find you?
Well, I, of course, am on Facebook as Nigel L. Johnson, to differentiate myself from all the other Nigel Johnsons out there because,
Dude,
I'm the fucking best.
But just side note, did I ever tell you that I went to high school with a Nigel Johnson?
Did you?
Yeah.
Was he, I don't want to make this, like...
Was he a black dude?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. He had long dreads, too.
I've literally never, at least not in person, I've never met another dude named Nigel who wasn't black, or at least mixed. Like,
and Nigel sounds like such a white dude.
That's the thing that gets me. Is like, literally every Nigel I've ever met was either black or mixed. Like, it always kind of threw me for a loop. But anyways, you can find me there. I do have an Instagram. Don't really. Haven't been posting. I think I haven't posted on it in 2 years. I'm probably gonna start posting again soon, because I've been doing my own little stuff. I've been working on my own little music, my solo stuff, and I'm planning on kind of rebranding my Instagram there and kind of using it for that. You can find it under Gent Johnson. For those of you that don't know, that how to spell that, it's DJENT _ DJOHNSON. Again, DJENT_DJOHNSON. Gent Johnson. The D is silent. I know it's dumb sounding name, but I love it. It's my favorite. But I'm on all that. Make sure you hit me up on there. Like 'em Artists Fall on Facebook. We're going to be, getting out on, different social media platforms as well. We're also going to be coming out with some new music real fucking soon. So, excuse me. Be ready for that. And let me tell you, that shit is going to slap. Don't just take my word for it, or his too, but, he can attest to the fact that shit's going to slap.
It slaps. It slaps for sure.
I hope I didn't clip your mic. I'm sorry.
It'll be fine.
But
yeah, is that?
There's going to be that, and honestly, look, but also look out for my stuff too. I'm out here. I'm getting my feet wet. If you ever need guitar work, vocal work, I'm available. For studio musician work. If you need, recording, mixing, mastering, I'm, been doing that too. I've got a couple of little projects I'm going to be working on. I'm really excited for those to get out.
Yeah, I'll put some links to some of your stuff. I'll probably put like the Odyssey link. This guy recorded, mixed, and mastered all of our song, The Odyssey. I'll put that in the link if you want to, or that link into the description if you guys want to listen to that. What else were you saying?
But just get like I said, just kind of getting my feet wet in that regard. So,
and he also does guitar setups too, and he does a really fucking good job.
Oh yeah, shout out to Tyler Bars. That's how you say his last
Tyler
name?
Bars. Oh yeah, I forgot to do that. He just asked you how you were so good at setting up guitars, basically.
Honestly, I'm a witch, but
he just cast a spell on it.
It literally just, really what it boiled down to was, all the learning that I did on my own guitars, because I would, when I first started, I looked up the price for, how much it would cost to restring and set up, the action and intonation. And when I saw the price, I'm like, dude, I could just learn how to do that myself.
Right.
And I've been doing it for so many years now that it's just second nature to me.
Dude, I tried to intonate my guitar, but I struggle with it so fucking much.
It's a lot at first, isn't it?
It doesn't even make 9 times out of 10 when I'm fucking with the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even move the tuning at all. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes you got to move it a drastic amount.
Yeah. But sometimes I go all the way to the side and it hasn't even changed on the tuner, and that gets kind of frustrating.
Mm-hmm. But thanks for the plug there too. If you need guitars set up at all, pickups replaced
In the Milwaukee area, obviously.
Yeah, I can even put new heads and stuff on your drums and tune them up real nice if for some reason
I can
you
attest
can't
to that. He does tune up drums really nicely.
But yeah, I think that's about it. If you're trying to record, hit me up. If you're trying to get something mixed, hit me up. I primarily do hip hop and rock metal based stuff. I'm trying to get my feet wet with a little.
Trying to mix my bluegrass band, bro.
I'll mix your bluegrass band.
there's 10 banjos. I have 10
banjos. That's that's a lot better than if you asked me to mix a polka record, because a new polka record only gets mixed once every 20 years. So when the last time you just polka. Just heard some new fresh ass polka?
Did you know that Kochansky's normally that's a polka bar? Usually they have polka bands playing there.
Man, that explains a lot. Oh man.
Shout out Kochansky's. Shout out polka bands. Shout out
to the polka. Yeah, shout out polka, man. If you if you trying to get into polka, let me know. I'm interested in that.
It'd be interesting to mix for sure.
But other than that, I think I think I plug myself on everything other than I'm a great person and a great friend. So just if you need a friend, I can do that for free.
Yeah.
Everything else I charge money for though. So.
All right, thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe, and yeah, share this around. I could really use the help sharing this around, getting some more viewers and stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys.